In every marriage, respect is the foundation that holds everything together. But what happens when that respect crumbles in front of millions of viewers? On a Thursday afternoon in April 2024, Family Feud witnessed something that would teach everyone watching, including Steve Harvey himself, a powerful lesson about the true meaning of partnership, dignity, and the consequences of taking the people we love for granted. The Johnson family from Memphis, Tennessee, stood confidently at their podium. Michael Johnson, a 42-year-old sales executive, had insisted on being the team captain. His wife Sarah, 39, a nurse who worked night shifts at the local hospital, stood quietly beside him along with their 3 adult children. What started as a normal game show appearance would soon become a moment that changed their lives forever. The warning signs were there from the beginning. As Steve Harvey made his way down the line for introductions, Michael dominated the conversation, constantly interrupting when Steve tried to talk to other family members. The Johnson family had been selected for Family Feud after Sarah's co-workers at the hospital had secretly submitted an application. They had written about how Sarah was the backbone of the cardiac unit, often staying late to comfort families, mentoring new nurses, and even using her own money to buy meals for patients' families who couldn't afford the cafeteria. They thought she deserved recognition and a chance to win something for herself for once. Michael had initially opposed the idea of going on television, saying it was beneath someone of his professional status. But when he learned about the potential prize money, he suddenly became enthusiastic, though only about what he could do with the winnings. He'd talked endlessly about the new golf clubs he wanted, the boat he'd been eyeing, never once asking Sarah what she might want. "Tell me about your lovely wife, Michael," Steve said, turning to Sarah with his warm smile. Before Sarah could speak, Michael jumped in. "Oh, that's just Sarah. She's a housewife. I'm the real breadwinner here, Steve. I make the big decisions in our family." Sarah's face showed a flicker of hurt, but she stayed quiet. Their eldest daughter, Jessica, tried to correct him. "Actually, Mom's a registered nurse." "Like I said," Michael cut her off, "she does some part-time work, but her main job is taking care of me in the house. Right, honey?" He didn't wait for Sarah's response, just patted her shoulder dismissively. Steve's expression changed subtly. Those who knew the show well could see the slight tightening of his jaw, the way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. But he maintained his professionalism and moved on with the game. The game started normally enough. The Johnsons were competing against the Williams family from Houston. The first few questions went smoothly, with both families showing good energy and sportsmanship. But as the game progressed, Michael's behavior became increasingly problematic. The Johnson children had developed coping mechanisms over the years. Jessica, 25, would clench her jaw whenever her father spoke over her mother. Emily, 22, had learned to redirect conversations away from topics that might trigger her father's dismissive comments. David, 20, the youngest, had started avoiding family gatherings altogether, unable to watch his mother being constantly diminished. Before the show, in the green room, Emily had tried to talk to her father. "Dad, please, just let Mom shine today. This is her moment." Michael had laughed it off. "Don't worry, princess. I'll make sure we win. Your mother gets nervous under pressure. You know how she is." The casual dismissal had made Emily's stomach turn. She knew her mother had remained calm through countless medical emergencies, had made split-second decisions that saved lives, yet here was her father painting her as weak and incompetent. When it was Sarah's turn to answer, Michael would constantly coach her from the side, speaking over her responses. No, Sarah, think. Use your brain for once," he said, after she gave a perfectly reasonable answer that happened to not be on the board. The audience began to shift uncomfortably. Some people exchanged glances. The Williams family looked awkward, unsure whether to celebrate their points when it came at the cost of watching someone be humiliated. The breaking point came during a crucial round. The Johnsons were behind by 50 points, and they needed a good answer to stay in the game. The question was, name something a spouse does that shows they appreciate you. It was Michael's turn. Without hesitation, he buzzed in. "Having my dinner ready when I get home?" The answer wasn't on the board. Steve tried to lighten the mood. "Well, that's specific, Michael. What else does Sarah do to show appreciation?" Michael laughed, oblivious to the tension in the room. "Oh, you know, Steve, keeping the house clean, making sure my shirts are ironed, not bothering me when the game is on. The usual wife duties. She knows her place." The studio fell silent. Even the usually energetic audience was completely still. Sarah stood frozen, her face a mask of embarrassment and pain. Their children looked mortified, with their son David actually stepping back from his father. Steve Harvey's expression transformed. The jovial host persona disappeared, replaced by something more serious. He set down his cards and turned to face Michael directly. Behind the scenes, the production team was having hushed conversations. In his 20 years of hosting game shows, Steve had dealt with difficult contestants before, but this was different. The show's producer whispered into his earpiece, "Steve, we support whatever you need to do here." They could see this was more than just inappropriate game show behavior. This was a man publicly degrading his wife, and it was being recorded for national television. Steve thought about his own journey, his own mistakes in past relationships, and the hard lessons he'd learned about respecting the women in his life. He thought about his daughters and what message this moment would send to every young woman watching. He made a decision that would change Family Feud history. "Michael," Steve said, his voice calm but firm, "can I ask you something? How long have you and Sarah been married?" 22 years, Michael replied, still not sensing the shift in atmosphere. 22 years, Steve repeated. "And in those 22 years, has Sarah been working as a nurse?" "Well, yeah, but like I said—" No, Steve interrupted, something he rarely did during the show. "I want to understand this. Sarah, may I ask you directly, what do you do for a living?" Sarah's voice was quiet but clear. "I'm a registered nurse in the cardiac unit at St. Mary's Hospital. I work night shifts, usually 4 12-hour shifts a week." 12-hour night shifts, Steve said, making sure everyone heard. "And then you come home and—" "I take care of the house and my family," Sarah said softly. What Sarah didn't mention was that she often worked extra shifts to cover their bills, that she had given up a promotion to nurse manager because it would mean more hours away from home. She didn't talk about the nights she came home after watching patients die, only to find Michael asleep on the couch with dishes in the sink and laundry piled up, waiting for her attention. She didn't mention how she'd missed her own mother's birthday dinner last month because Michael had insisted she needed to prepare food for his company golf tournament. Their daughter Jessica knew these truths. She had watched her mother's exhaustion deepen over the years, had seen her fall asleep standing up while making breakfast after a particularly brutal shift. Jessica had tried to help more around the house, but Michael had told her to focus on her studies, saying, "That's your mother's department." Steve nodded slowly. The audience was completely engaged now, sensing they were witnessing something more important than a game show. Steve turned back to Michael. "Michael, do you understand what you just did? You stood here on national television and diminished your wife's career. You called her just a housewife when she's saving lives at night and then coming home to take care of your family. You said she knows her place. Brother, let me tell you something." Steve paused, clearly choosing his words carefully. The production team was on alert, unsure of what was about to happen. In all my years hosting this show, I've seen families compete, laugh, sometimes disagree, but I have never seen a man disrespect his wife the way you just did, and I won't stand for it on my stage. Michael finally seemed to realize the severity of the situation. "Steve, come on, I was just joking around." "Were you joking when you told her to use her brain for once?" Steve asked. "Were you joking when you interrupted your own daughter trying to tell me about her mother's career? A joke is only funny if everyone's laughing, and I don't see your wife laughing. I don't see your children laughing." The audience began to applaud, slowly at first, then building to support Steve's words. But he raised his hand for silence. "Michael, I'm going to ask you to step off the stage," Steve said firmly. "This show is called Family Feud, and family is built on love and respect. What you've shown here today is neither." The statement hit like thunder. In the history of Family Feud, Steve Harvey had never asked a contestant to leave the stage. Michael stood frozen, his face cycling through confusion, anger, and finally, embarrassment. "You can't kick me off. We're in the middle of a game," Michael protested. "Yes, I can," Steve replied calmly. "This is my show, and I won't have anyone treating their family like servants here. Your family can continue playing if they want, but you need to leave." What happened next surprised everyone. Sarah, who had been silent through most of the ordeal, finally spoke up. "Wait," she said, her voice stronger now. "Steve, I appreciate what you're doing, but can I say something?" Steve nodded respectfully. "Of course, Sarah. This is your moment." Sarah turned to face her husband. For the first time all day, she looked him directly in the eyes. "Michael, for 22 years, I've loved you. I've raised our children, kept our home, and worked nights saving lives so I could be there for the kids during the day. I've never asked for recognition or praise, but I never thought you saw me as a servant." Her voice broke slightly, but she continued. "When we got married, you promised to honor and cherish me. Today, in front of our children and the world, you showed them that you don't even respect me. How are our daughters supposed to expect respect in their relationships when their father doesn't show it to their mother? The camera caught their daughters, Jessica and Emily, both wiping away tears. Their son David had moved to stand supportively behind his mother. Michael's facade finally cracked. For perhaps the first time, he saw the impact of his words reflected in his family's faces. Sarah, I didn't mean... Yes, you did, Sarah interrupted, finding strength she didn't know she had. You meant every word. This isn't the first time. It's just the first time other people have seen it. And I'm grateful to Mr. Harvey for making me realize that I don't have to accept it anymore. Steve Harvey stepped forward. Sarah, you and your children are welcome to continue playing if you'd like. We can proceed with just the four of you, or we can stop here, whatever you're comfortable with. Sarah looked at her children, who all nodded supportively. We'd like to continue, Mr. Harvey. My children and I are a family, with or without Michael. The audience erupted in supportive applause. Michael, realizing he had no choice, slowly walked off the stage. But before he reached the exit, he turned back. Sarah, can we talk after... After 22 years, Michael, you can wait an hour while I finish this game with our children, Sarah said firmly. It was perhaps the first time she had ever put herself first. As Michael left the stage, Steve did something unexpected. He walked over to Sarah and gently took her hand. Sarah, I want you to know something. What you just did took more courage than most people show in a lifetime. Your children just watched their mother stand up for herself with dignity and grace. That's a lesson they'll never forget. The game resumed with just Sarah and her 3 children. The transformation was immediate and remarkable. Without Michael's oppressive presence, Sarah bloomed. She laughed, she made jokes, she high-fived her children. Her answers were confident and thoughtful. During one particularly poignant moment, the question was, name something that makes a marriage strong. Sarah buzzed in immediately. Mutual respect. It was the #1 answer. The audience gave her a standing ovation. The Johnson family, minus Michael, ended up winning the game. As they prepared for fast money, Steve took a moment to address the audience and cameras. Folks, what we witnessed today is something that happens in too many homes, just usually not on television. When we diminish our partners, when we treat them as less than equals, we don't just hurt them, we hurt ourselves and our children. We destroy the very foundation of what family means, he continued. To the men watching this, your wife is not your servant. She's your partner, your equal, your teammate in life. And to anyone in a relationship where you're not being respected, you deserve better. Don't let anyone, not even someone you love, make you feel less than you are. In Fast Money, Sarah and her eldest daughter Jessica competed. They needed 200 points to win $20,000. As Sarah stood at the podium, she seemed like a different person. Confident, radiant, free. They scored 197 points, just short of the prize money. But as the buzzer sounded, something remarkable happened. Steve Harvey did something unprecedented. You know what? Steve said. Today, this family showed us all what real strength looks like. Sarah, you stood up for yourself and taught your children a lesson worth more than any prize money. I'm personally going to make sure your family gets that $20,000. The audience exploded with applause. Sarah broke down in tears, hugging her children. But the story didn't end there. When the episode aired 2 weeks later, the response was overwhelming. The clip went viral within hours, with millions sharing their own stories of overcoming disrespect in relationships. Sarah received thousands of messages from women who said her courage had inspired them to demand better treatment in their own lives. The hashtag #JustHerShe knows her worth began trending on social media within hours of the episode airing. Women and men from around the world shared their stories of standing up to disrespect, finding their voices, and demanding equal partnership in their relationships. Celebrities retweeted the clip with messages of support. Oprah Winfrey herself reached out to Sarah, inviting her to appear on her podcast to discuss the importance of self-worth and mutual respect in relationships. TikTok users created a trend where they shared their own "she knows her place" moments, times when they had been diminished by partners, followed by their empowering responses. The trend garnered over 100 million views in the first week. Young people especially connected with the message, with many saying it made them rethink what they would accept in their own relationships. Major news outlets picked up the story. Sarah was invited to speak on talk shows about respect in relationships and the importance of standing up for yourself. She used the platform to advocate for nurses and working mothers who often go unrecognized for their contributions. As for Michael, the public humiliation served as a wake-up call. He enrolled in counseling and began the hard work of understanding how his attitudes had developed and how to change them. He wrote a public apology, not for publicity, but published in their local paper, acknowledging his behavior and committing to change. The revelation that came through counseling was profound. Michael discovered that his behavior at home mirrored how he treated female colleagues at work. His company's HR department had actually received several complaints about his dismissive attitude toward women on his sales team. After the Family Feud episode aired, 2 female coworkers approached his manager, sharing how Michael routinely took credit for their ideas and referred to the women in the office as the girls who help out. His manager, who had seen the viral clip, finally connected the dots. Michael was put on probation and required to complete sensitivity training. In therapy, Michael traced his attitudes back to his own father, who had treated his mother the same way. "I thought that was just how marriages worked," he admitted to his therapist. "My dad would come home from work, sit in his chair, and my mom would serve him. She never complained, so I thought she was happy." It wasn't until his therapist asked him to recall his mother's face during those moments that Michael realized the truth. She had worn the same mask of resignation that Sarah had worn for 22 years. 6 months later, Steve Harvey invited the family back for a special segment. This time, all 5 Johnsons appeared together. The change in Michael was evident. He stood beside Sarah, not in front of her. When he spoke, he waited his turn. Most importantly, when Steve asked about Sarah's work, Michael was the first to praise her. "My wife is a hero," Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. "She saves lives every night, then comes home and saves our family every day. I was too proud and too foolish to see it. I almost lost the best thing in my life because I couldn't see her worth." Sarah revealed that they had been in counseling together, working to rebuild their marriage on a foundation of mutual respect. "It wasn't easy," she admitted. 22 years of patterns don't change overnight. But that moment on your show, Steve, was the catalyst we needed." Their children spoke about how the experience had changed their family dynamic. Jessica, the eldest, shared that she had been in a relationship where she was being similarly dismissed. "Watching my mom stand up for herself gave me the courage to end that relationship and demand better." David, their son, talked about how it had changed his perspective on relationships. "I realized I was starting to develop some of the same attitudes as my dad. Seeing the pain it caused made me commit to being different, to being better." Steve Harvey, visibly moved by the family's transformation, offered some final wisdom. "What we saw here, folks, is that change is possible, but it only happens when we're willing to face hard truths about ourselves." Michael had to see himself clearly, maybe for the first time. Sarah had to find her voice, and together, they're building something better. The impact of that single Family Feud episode rippled far beyond the Johnson family. Marriage counselors reported an increase in couples seeking help after watching the clip. Organizations supporting working mothers reached out to Sarah to become a spokesperson. The phrase, "she knows her place," became a rallying cry for discussions about respect in relationships, with people sharing stories of overcoming similar situations. The episode had particularly strong resonance in the healthcare community. Nurses from across the country reached out to Sarah, sharing their own stories of being undervalued despite their critical role in patient care. The American Nurses Association invited Sarah to speak at their annual conference about work-life balance and the importance of having supportive partners. Her speech, titled "More Than Just a Nurse, Demanding Respect in All Areas of Life," received a standing ovation from the 5,000 attendees. Local hospitals began implementing programs to support their staff's family lives, recognizing that healthcare workers often face similar challenges. St. Mary's Hospital, where Sarah worked, created a support group for nurses dealing with family stress, naming it the Sarah Johnson Circle in her honor. The group met monthly, providing a safe space for healthcare workers to discuss the unique challenges of balancing demanding careers with family expectations. Sarah started a blog called Finding Your Voice, where she shared her journey and provided resources for people in similar situations. She partnered with local women's organizations to create support groups for those struggling with disrespect in their relationships. The $20,000 from Steve Harvey became seed money for a foundation supporting working mothers pursuing further education. The foundation, officially named the Worth Initiative, provided more than just financial support. Sarah personally mentored grant recipients, many of whom were nurses, teachers, and other essential workers whose contributions were undervalued at home. One recipient, Maria, a respiratory therapist with 3 children, used the grant to complete her bachelor's degree while leaving an emotionally abusive marriage. Sarah didn't just give me money, Maria said at the foundation's first anniversary gala. She gave me permission to believe I deserved more. Sarah's transformation extended beyond her advocacy work. For the first time in over 2 decades, she started doing things purely for herself. She joined a book club, something Michael had always mocked as a waste of time. She took up painting, discovering a talent she never knew she had. Her first painting, a self-portrait where she stood tall in her scrubs with her stethoscope forming a crown, sold for $5,000 at a charity auction, with proceeds going to the foundation. Her children noticed the change immediately. Mom started laughing again, Emily shared in a follow-up interview. Not the polite laugh she used to do, but real, deep, joyful laughter. She started wearing bright colors instead of the muted tones she thought were appropriate. She even went back to school herself, enrolling in a hospital administration program she had abandoned years earlier when Michael said they didn't need her to advance her career. A year later, the Johnsons returned once more to Family Feud, this time competing as a unified family. The difference was remarkable. Michael and Sarah played as true partners, celebrating each other's answers, supporting each other through wrong guesses. When asked about the transformation, Michael's answer was simple but profound. I learned that when you truly respect your partner, when you see them as your equal, everything gets better. Our marriage is stronger, our children respect us both more, and I actually like the man I see in the mirror now. The episode became required viewing in many relationship counseling programs. Universities used it in sociology and gender studies courses. But perhaps its greatest impact was in the countless living rooms where couples watched it together and had difficult but necessary conversations about respect, appreciation, and partnership. Steve Harvey later reflected on that day in his memoir. In all my years of television, few moments affected me as deeply as watching Sarah Johnson find her voice. It reminded me that sometimes our platforms give us the opportunity to do more than entertain. They let us shine a light on what matters. He continued, I've learned that respect isn't just about what we say, it's about how we listen, how we value, how we lift up the people we claim to love. That day, we all learned that lesson together. The story of the Johnson family serves as a powerful reminder that it's never too late to change, never too late to demand respect, and never too late to become the partner and parent your family deserves. It shows that sometimes the most profound transformations happen not in private, but when we're brave enough to confront our failures in the light of day. For Sarah, the nurse who had spent years caring for others while neglecting her own needs, that day on Family Feud was the beginning of a new chapter. She often says, I went on that show as Michael's wife. I left as Sarah, nurse, mother, and woman who knows her worth. And for Michael, the public humiliation became public redemption. His journey from dismissive husband to supportive partner inspired other men to examine their own relationships. He now speaks at men's groups about toxic masculinity and the importance of seeing women as equals. Their story proves that even in our darkest moments of failure, there exists the possibility for growth, redemption, and transformation. It reminds us that respect isn't just a word, it's a daily practice, a conscious choice, and the foundation of every healthy relationship. As Steve Harvey said that day, Family Feud is about families, and families are built on love and respect. When we forget that, we lose more than a game. We lose what matters most. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of the importance of respect in relationships, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Remember, everyone deserves to be valued, appreciated, and respected, especially by the ones they love. Together, we can spread more stories that inspire positive change and remind us all of what truly matters in life. Thank you for watching.